Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Edric Show. I am your host, Edric Jerome. This is the place for intelligent conversation with interesting people. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, and you'll get notified when I post content each and every week. Been looking forward to this conversation. My guest is Troy Finley Sr. Troy is the Bay Area chapter president of the National Action Network, an organization founded by the Reverend Al Sharpton. Troy also has a passion for addressing the needs and concerns for African Americans, including areas like generational wealth, financial literacy, and assistance for military veterans. Troy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was
My,
pretty good. I like that. That was a good introduction. I
was it
dug
okay?
that one.
It was all
Yeah, that
right?
was good stuff. Yeah, that
Okay,
was good.
cool. All right, cool. I try to capture people, whenever we do the intro,
Yeah.
so it's all good. Uh, let's start out. Quick aside, I met you a couple weeks ago. We had a really good
Yes.
conversation. I said, let's continue this conversation on the Edric Show. So I thank you for coming on. I really want to talk about some of the things that we were talking about at the event we were at. So first of all, though,
Mhm.
let me start out with tell me about your organization, the Bay Area chapter of the National Action Network, and how did you get started with that organization?
Wow. So Nan, like you said, it was started by Reverend Al Sharpton. It was within him to continue the works of Martin Luther King. And he wanted to make something that's a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more kind of and his personality. If you know anything, love him or hate him, you know, the man has a great heart and he wants to do things that get things done. And one of the things that brought me to them was that middle name, Action.
Hmm.
I don't believe in, I'm not a fan of titles. I'm not a fan of all that stuff. I believe in the work that you do, you know. So, and that's what really kind of attracted me to them. About, I'll say, uh, 2 years ago, two and a half, no, 3 years ago. And I didn't join because I was still with the NAACP. And a couple of opportunities opened up, and here I am. I opened up a Solano branch first, the Solano chapter, but then they were like, "Hey, why don't you just go ahead and see what you can do in the Bay Area?" So now my chapter, the territory that I cover is from San Francisco to Dixon and down to San Jose.
Hmm.
So,
Uh,
yeah,
you mentioned the NAACP, and that actually kind of leads into my next question. What are some of the ways? I mean, there's various civil rights organizations and
yeah.
organizations out there that are advocating and fighting for racial justice and a variety of things. But what
Mhm.
makes National Action Network different than some of the other organizations you may have been, part of in the past?
Well, for me at least, they've given me the freedom to do things the way I see fit, to be more active in the community, to have a bigger voice with things. Their new transition of what they're trying to do is making sure that we have seat at the tables and forming policy, writing, helping, mold laws and things like that. And they understand, Reverend Al Sharpton understands that's how we actually implement change. It's one thing to get out there and protest and do all that. But if you're not there helping writing the policies and the laws that affect us on a day-to-day basis, then really what's the point? And that's that was the big thing that attracted me to them, because now we can actually not just see change and yell about change and yell about that we want to change. We actually have the responsibility and the ability to actually affect change. So that's what brought me to them.
We had kind of gotten into a conversation about, everybody's focused on national politics, the national election, so forth and
Hmm.
so on. But talk to me about the importance of local electoral politics. Can you speak to the critical importance of local electoral politics and why it's so important to our community?
I'll give you an example. I went to a city council meeting in Vallejo, I believe the Tuesday after you and I had met. And one of the things that they were talking about is getting rid of tobacco and all the stores, and and putting, actually, I'm going to rephrase that. They're trying to make it harder to people to renew their license. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, hold on, things like that affect us on a day-to-day basis, because one of their little caveats and what they're trying to do is you can't sell singles, but you can sell a 10-pack.
Hmm.
And we're like, hold on, how does that, let me know how that helps. Because the way I see it, if somebody can go in there and buy a 10-pack, what are they going to do? They're going to take it back to the streets and sell them as singles. Let me know how that helps. And those are the things that affect us on a day-to-day basis. And that's how I look at local politics. Your city council, your county supervisors, your congresspeople, your local senators, those things affect your day-to-day lives, right? Those affect how much you're going to pay taxes in your community. Those affect how much water you're going to be able to use. Things that hit you on a day-to-day basis. That's what local politics is all about. People get so hyped about your presidential elections, they forget about the importance of local politics. Hey, you got to go to your city council meetings. Why? You'll figure out why you're paying higher taxes. If we go back to what was it, Trayvon Martin, that tragedy could have been avoided if people went to their city council meetings and found out, hey, they're letting people carry guns. If you would have had a voice, and just think about it in that sense, I don't want to bring up a tragedy, but that tragedy could have been avoided because people would have said, hey, hold on, we're not just going to let y'all just carry guns all over the place just because. No. But since it was an open carry community, we have a tragedy. And so those are the things that I see, why I see that it's so important to be so involved in local politics. But yeah, that's it. You can go ahead and ask the next one. I can go on for a minute. I can keep going on that one.
No,
And
go well. Expound.
I'm, I'm
What else, man? Give me some more jewels, because that's why I wanted you on, because we were talking, man, and I really liked what you had to say. Because to your point, we not only is there not enough emphasis, in my opinion, on local politics, that goes hand in hand with the lack of coverage of local news,
mhm.
which we kind of can get into. But tell me a little bit more about how someone who may not be involved locally, what are some of the things that they can do to get involved in local politics?
Okay, so the first thing that came to mind was vote. And I say vote because if you go out and vote, that means, I'm hoping that it means you're going to want to educate yourself on what you're voting for. So that would mean to me, okay, you're going to make it to city council meetings. You're going to go to the county supervisors and tell them y'all can't keep having meetings first thing in the morning while everybody is at work. you know, People want to know what's going on in their county, and those people have jobs. Stop doing it. I think that's one of the weirdest and lightweight slick things that are going on, in Solano County at least, that they have those meetings in the morning. It's like, dude, really? In the morning? What y'all don't want us to know? So, but it is, you have to vote. You have to get involved. You have to volunteer for things. Educate yourself on what's happening in your community. I always say, if you don't vote, you can't, I don't want to hear you complaining because you're not taking part in what's going on. And always remember, our vote, if people go back when President Obama got elected the first time, everybody came out in droves. It was black and brown people as far as the eye could see at these voter booths. But then his next election, the next cycle, it was okay, it died down a little bit. But one of the things that people really didn't notice is how much the Republican Party targeted black and brown people. and how much black and brown people got a little bit more educated on politics, on policies, on what's going on. So it shows you the importance of voting. Because if a party reaches out to you specifically, so they don't have to see another travesty happen, and that was the main point about it, because they didn't have any black and brown voting.
Right.
So what do? No, let's go talk to them. And what do people want? They want people to pay attention. Oh, you actually want to hear what I have to say? And they go in there and lie and say, of course we do. As long as we get your vote, we want to hear what you have to say. And that's a lesson. I try to tell people that no, politicians don't care about you unless you vote.
Right.
They're not going to do what you say unless you vote. And don't go, oh, they didn't do what I wanted them to do, so I'm just never going to vote again. What are you doing? Just because that one person and you understand how this works, go vote them out now. Show
Right.
them that your vote actually counts for something. That they can't just say, oh, I got your vote last time, so I'm going to do whatever. No, we voted you in, we can vote you out. And that's a policy and understanding that we really do need to push and understand.
Speaking of the power of voting and the right and the franchise to vote, I know one of the issues you've been very active in is the area of expungement, meaning
Yeah.
helping young men, young women, remove certain things from their record so that they can, quote unquote, become back into society. So tell me about the importance of expungement, particularly in the conversation we just had about voting, and why is that something that you've been focused on for a while now?
Well, one, people don't know that they can have things taken off their record. That's an important part. They don't know. And what that does, getting things taken off your record will help you get a better job, help you qualify for a house, qualify for a loan, and these sort of things. You can actually vote, and things of that nature. And I've always looked at it as a barrier with people who are in those situations. So what I do, you know what? Let me help you get that barrier out the way. So therefore, now you don't. What's the excuse? What do you have now? What are you going to hang? Because people would say, well, I can't go do this because every time I try to go apply for the job, they say I have this in my record and I can't do that. And sometimes it's stuff from years ago. I mean, I remember the first one we did 2 years back in Vallejo. Somebody came up and was like, you know what, man, I didn't have this on my record for 15 years. Can you, help me get it off? And we were able to help. And now he can move, now he feels that relief. He can move on. And it's a good thing. And people want it. We did it in Vallejo, but we had people coming in from San Francisco,
Hmm.
So that just showed me the importance of it. So now we're going to do a series of them. The first one is on the 27th in Oakland. And then it's Richmond, Vallejo. We're trying to get a place to do it in Antioch or Pittsburgh, in that area. And then we're going to do another one in Fairfield to end the series. And part of what we're doing with the expungement, also we're doing voter registration. So these men and women who come in understand, hold on, not only can you get this stuff taken off your record, but now we're going to go ahead and register you to vote. So now you can actually really be a part of the decision makings in your own life. So that's part of it. That has been my driving force behind it, which is helping people.
I applaud you for that because it's needed, and like you said, sometimes people just don't know where to go to get the help they need,
Yeah,
and offering those
yeah.
services is definitely welcomed in the community, for sure. So I applaud you for that. Um,
Thank you.
you recently did a couple of workshops titled "Men of Power," and that name
Yeah.
intrigued me. What does power stand for, and what were some of the goals of the workshops?
So the funny part about that is, and I'm gonna go ahead and explain that. I spoke at two events. Matter of fact, I'm speaking at another one Saturday in Vallejo, and it's a follow up to the one I did, the one I'm going to speak about. And I did it in Oakland, and the pastor, the bishop who's doing it, he's doing it again in Vallejo. And you're able to get all the info
Sure.
if you go to my Facebook page and all that stuff. And so it was the first Men of Power was about just showing the power of what men can do if they put their mind to. And it was more, actually, no, that was the second one. The Men of Power, that was the more of a financial kind of base thing. But what I wanted to talk to when I spoke, I wanted to give it a little bit of a turn and talk about men valuing themselves. Because it's not just, and without a price tag put on it, but actually valuing who they are and who they can become, especially in this day and age where men are getting blamed for everything. There's nothing going on right now that a man isn't at fault for, and I want to have it be a situation where I'm speaking to a black and brown community where we get blamed. I said this to someone and they kind of had to stop and think about it. I said, we are the most duplicated, but we are also the most blamed. There's something, if there's a style, if there's, we can go from clothing to music to athletics, everything. Everybody wants to be a black guy until you got to be a black guy.
Right. Right.
So
right.
I just wanted people to really understand that that's a real thing. You want to be a black guy until it comes down to being a black guy. Then you're like, nah, I'm cool. I'm gonna go over here and do whatever. And then at the same time, we get blamed for any sort of violence in the streets. We get blamed for any sort of wrongdoing across the board. And don't get me wrong, we do have to take responsibility for some of that, but not all of it. We do have to be in the mindset of, yes, we need to be better. And that's why I put it in a more of a perspective of valuing ourselves more than what we're doing, that we are a true commodity that needs to be given, the credit that we deserve, and not just being the butt of everything that's going on right now. And so that I did that speech in Concord, no, in Pittsburgh. The one I did in Oakland was also focusing on men of power, but in a more of a family sense. Of the one of the gentlemen that I had followed said it's steel sharpening steel, iron sharpening iron. And I came behind him and I said, you know what? He's right. But for iron to sharpen iron, we have to be sharp ourselves. And that means taking personal accountability. That means trying to improve our own lives first before we start pointing fingers to try to help somebody. So that's still a big part of what a lot of the things that I'm doing. Robin, with Nan, that I was saying, they're black based, but not black focused.
Mm.
So I want people to understand that too. We're black based, but we're not black focused, because we do understand of what our community is made up of. Our community that we live in. I don't live in a black neighborhood, right? That's not how that works. So I need to improve my neighborhood. And
Right.
people who are non-black or non-brown, they need to understand you don't live in a singular racial neighborhood. Everything that happens affects you, no matter what it is. One of the big things that I'm trying to push right now is bringing football and track and field back to Solano Community College. Simply for the fact of how that affects our community, not just black and brown folks, but our community. And also men's soccer. And that's a whole other conversation about
Absolutely.
athletics at Solano Community College, but I want people to understand the importance of that, because what makes up a community, what makes housing prices go up, the more educated that your community is, the higher the value of your home becomes. And that's just one of the things that people really don't look at when they start to say, well, we don't need that, or we don't want those kind of people here. Educated people bring up property values, just to make it simple, just a simple way of looking at it. So
Not to
there's
mention,
there's that.
when it comes to sports, when you have a very good college football team, there's revenue. I mean, there's all kinds of
Oh,
things.
huge revenue,
Yeah,
huge
that go
revenue.
with that. Yeah,
One
absolutely.
football player brings in 2.3 children,
Hmm.
2.3 kids.
Hmm.
One football player. I was talking, so my sons have played football, and we were having this discussion. And I was like, and I told them that statistic, and they're kind of looking at me. I was like, okay, tell me one of your friends that you've played football with that doesn't have a brother or sister.
Right. Yep.
You
Yep.
just one. And hey, I'll wait. And they've played football for years. I was like, I just need one. You tell me one that doesn't have a brother or sister I don't even care if they play sports, but athletes come from families, multiple kid families. So it's just one of those things. And people will go to a school just because they have a football program.
Exactly.
That's just the way it works, you
Exactly.
know.
Exactly. Um,
So
Next question for you is
mhm,
we were talking about black men, and
mhm,
right now, obviously, African American women are very powerful politically, especially in Democratic Party. They hold sway.
mhm.
But my question to you is, there was a lot of talk about black men as a political group over the last few weeks, but in your opinion, where does our political power lie as black men? If we were to focus it, or have the ability to focus our political power, where does that lie? How do we even get to the point where we can leverage our political power?
So one of the problems, let me touch on this first. One of the problems with Black women becoming strong in politics is that, and if you just think about it, we don't even talk about Black men in politics. It is not we are not, Black men in politics are not a conversation right
So I asked the question.
now. So, and unless, of course, you're one of the main three Black Republicans right now.
Right.
Um, so one of the things that I'm putting together, and I'm glad you brought this up, is that I'm trying to gather Black and brown men. So part of what I do, I'm a political strategist and I do messaging. And I've worked on campaigns from congressional down to city council. And one of the big things that I've seen is the fact that nobody's talking to Black men anymore. No one's trying to encourage Black men to run. They still do it, but they're not planning to do it. And that's one of the big things. One of the big things I have and completely respect about Republicans is that they plan.
Right.
They have a kid right now in junior high school that as soon as he grows up and gets old enough, he's going to run for Congress. They have his life planned out. And I try to get our people to understand that planning wins. Planning wins, and no matter where you're at. You can plan out your campaign, you can go ahead and, so like now there are people who, papers are officially pulled on the 15th, I think.
Yeah.
There's people who just announced yesterday that they're going to run for something. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Well, because I want to run and I have a voice and blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, okay, that's great. But did you plan on this? Do you have not just financial support, but do you also have the support of your family, your friends? Do you have a base in which will help you? Who's going to run your campaign? Who's going to do your message? Who's going to strategize for you? Who are going to do these jobs that you're going to need in your campaign? And more times than not, the answer comes back, well, I'm talking to a few people. You're talking to a few people? Are you kidding me? I met this young lady who's running for mayor. She's been campaigning for a year. I wanted to talk to her just because she's been campaigning for a year. So I think that's so impressive. I'm handling the people who I talk to now. One, I want them to have ambition, but two, you have to have a plan. And us as a community, we fail to plan a lot and fail to stick to our plans. And especially with Black men who are so vilified in politics, it's hard for them to want to get involved. But then I do give them the adage of, but if you want to make change, you have to get involved. It's one of those things. It's what was it Chris Brown said? Chris Brown said, "How are you going to complain about the club and you can't even get in?"
Right. Exactly.
Exactly. So if you're not in it, what are you doing? If you're not taking that time to learn the rules and regulations in your city and in your county, learn how to plan out. And the big thing is, there's so many different things you can run for. You don't always have to run for mayor or city council,
or be appointed. There's appointed positions too.
There's appointed positions, but once again, you have to be involved.
Correct.
You've got to be there to be involved. So Black men we need to come together. We need to get an understanding about what it takes to actually run for an office, what it takes to be involved. So
love to continue that conversation with you in the future, my man, because it's so important. And we are a block that could sway an election. I mean, if that's how people look at that's how they look at it. Who can sway this election? So we have to make ourselves but you're right. We have to have a plan, we have to have a vision, we have to have a strategy. And principles. Yep.
And even going back, we can go back to when President Obama first got elected. Why? Black men got up and voted.
Right.
Forget any other demographic. Black men got up and voted.
Yep.
So there you go.
Yep. Well said. Well said. Well said. We have a couple minutes left, so let me now ask you about something that caught my eye. You have a quote that's called "Understanding the Power of the Narrative." And as a writer, man, that stuck out to me because that says a lot. But what do you mean by that when you say understanding the power of the narrative?
The narrative right now has been the most powerful thing in politics, because the narrative doesn't have to be right or wrong. It's just what's being said. So if we look at it in that sense, the power of the narrative, you did your research on that one.
I always do.
I'll give you credit for that one.
Intelligent conversation with interesting people, man. Come on.
The narrative, though, will form an election. It forms opinions, right or wrong. The one thing about Donald Trump is he barely knows what he's talking about, but he has formed a narrative that people believe. And you can't get around that. He's got out there and he says it over and over again until people believe him. Even though a reasonable person would be like, nah, that doesn't make sense and blah, blah, blah. But that's what he keeps spilling out. And that's what they keep sucking in. So I look at it in the sense of, okay, let's make sure that every narrative gets out. One of the biggest problems I have about the Democratic Party right now is that they don't have a true narrative. Their narrative is on the defense, not the offense. Their narrative is to say somebody is lying. I have facts. I'm like, your facts aren't important when it comes to a narrative. Donald Trump has been pushing lies for the last 8 years. So where does truth have to come into it? The Republican Party pushing lies and propaganda, but that's their narrative. And that's what they're controlling. So the power, I don't think we push the power of podcasts, the power of print, the power of radio enough that we are changing a narrative. We're more on the lines of, well, we'll just go along and we'll defend ourselves instead of saying, no, that's wrong. Let's call them out. What's her name? Congresswoman from Texas. Oh, I forgot her name. A black lady. She is. There's actually, I'll just say, not just her, but there is a new set of congressmen and women who are starting to change that narrative.
There's no fear.
But
they don't have any fear, and I think that's
they
a
don't.
big part of it.
It's a huge part of it because they don't think they're gonna. They don't have the fear of losing their jobs.
Right.
They're able to do this and still keep going and still keep, you know, pushing the reason why they got elected. And that was to stand up for the people, to be men and women of service. So that falls into the idea of pushing the narrative.
Interesting. Well said again, man. That's why I wanted to have you on.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Yeah. So as we wrap this up, man, if people want more information about you, or they want more information about the National Action Network or the Bay Area chapter, or how to get involved, or your workshops that are coming up, how can they get a hold of you, and where can they get the information?
With everything right now, you can reach me on email. You can go to info@NAN, NAN, BayArea.org. Same thing. I'm on NAN Bay Area on Facebook and on Instagram. I'm trying to stay off of Twitter because I don't like people who go on Twitter that much.
A little problematic right now.
Very problematic. They throw out shots and not
Right.
necessarily anything that's worth it.
Right.
So, but we do have a calendar that's on the website that actually I have to update. Just sitting here thinking about it, I got to put everything that we're doing on the calendar. But yeah, I'm always available. You can always hit me on Facebook. I'm at if you can't get me on the NAN site, you can go to Troy L. Finley Sr. on Facebook. I am you can reach me on Troy_on Instagram. I got that nickname for when I used to do radio. It was weird.
Interesting.
But yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm readily available. I'll field any and all questions. You know, I don't like shirking away from anything. So, and right now, I'm in that mindset. I'll be picking a lot of fights with a lot of different cities. You know, from San Francisco to Dixon, and just trying to implement change, trying to help people. That's all we're really about. We're about service.
Excellent. Well, like I say, man, when I met you, and I think we spoke literally right off the top for like 15 minutes, and I just knew you were someone I wanted to have on the show because I applaud your perspective and your approach. And it's time for something new, and it's time for a new vision, because right now the old way doesn't seem to be benefiting people at all. So
the old way doesn't work anymore, simply because the things we need to evolve with things. We need to make things as times have changed. I always believe that you communicate with your audience the way they communicate.
Right.
You know, so now we're on social media. Everybody has people have podcasts. Everybody's on TikTok. So that's how we have to communicate. Having meetings on Saturdays thinking you get ready to implement change is not the way to do it. You know, we have to be out there. We have to be amongst the people and show up. You know, so.
No,
but thank you. I appreciate that comment.
You're welcome. You're welcome. If anything I can do, man, just reach out. Let me know. Definitely want to continue this dialogue and bring some awareness to our people. So again, Troy L. Finley Sr., Bay Area chapter president of the National Action Network. I want to thank you so much for coming on the Edric Show today. I really appreciate the conversation.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. This has been another edition of the Edric Show. I am your host, Edric Jerome. As promised, intelligent conversation with interesting people. Go ahead and ring that notification bell, hit that subscribe button. You'll get notified when I post content each and every week. I want to thank you for tuning in, and I will catch you on the next episode.